You were taught that being a good man would be enough, that if you were loyal, present, respectful, and honest, she'd see your value. You believed that the more you gave, the more she'd give back. But here you are, watching her pull away the closer you get. You offer safety, she seeks excitement. You give consistency, she craves chaos. And you can't figure out why she keeps chasing after men who treat her like she's disposable, while you're the one who would have done anything to keep her safe. You were the shoulder, the constant, the one who was always there, replying fast, asking if she ate, checking if she got home okay. But instead of gratitude, all you got was silent indifference, a growing distance that didn't make sense until you realized something painful. She didn't want a companion. She wanted a challenge. This isn't about right or wrong. This is about biology, emotion, and subconscious wiring. A woman might say she wants a stable man, and maybe part of her does. But what truly captures her, what hijacks her attention and makes her dream at night, is unpredictability. Not instability, not abuse, but the mystery of a man she can't fully read, a man she can't entirely control. And if you're always there, always explaining, always giving without pause, you become the opposite of that. You become a page already read, a song already played, a meal she knows the taste of. And desire, real desire, doesn't grow in what's familiar. It grows in what's uncertain. You see, it's not that you're not good enough. It's that you're too accessible, too emotionally transparent, too available. She doesn't have to wonder about you. She doesn't have to guess. There's no puzzle, no anticipation, no elevation of emotion. You've removed every bit of tension by putting your cards on the table too soon. And that's where the disconnection begins. In her mind, she knows you're the better guy. But emotionally, she doesn't feel the same fire she does with the ones who remain just slightly out of reach. Not because they're better, but because they understand something most men ignore. Mystery breeds value. Think about it. When you chase someone who doesn't fully reciprocate, when you're unsure of how they feel, your mind obsesses. You overanalyze text. You replay conversation. You imagine meanings where there were none. Now reverse that dynamic. That's what happens to her when she meets a man who doesn't explain himself constantly, a man who has emotional boundaries, a man who doesn't respond instantly, not because he's playing a game, but because his life is full and his self-worth doesn't hinge on her replies. She feels the pull, not because he's cruel, but because he's whole, with or without her. That's where you've been losing, not in your heart, but in your presence. You're showing up with good intentions, but she reads it as neediness. You think you're loving her with devotion, but she interprets it as desperation. You confuse availability with attraction, but attraction lives in the unknown. It thrives on tension, on curiosity, on wondering what's next. And when there's no wondering left, when she knows exactly what you'll say, how you'll react, how far you'll go, she stops looking forward to the next moment, and she starts craving the unknown that someone else might bring. This isn't to say you should become cold or manipulative. It's not about becoming the villain. It's about reclaiming your mystery, about realizing that part of masculine energy is presence mixed with unpredictability. Not unpredictability in your values, but in your reactions, your availability, your pace. Because when you're too steady too soon, she assumes there's no growth, no danger, no edge. And without edge, there's no fire. Without fire, there's no gravity. Look back on the moments you felt most desired. Were you chasing? Or were you slightly distant? Focused on your own life? Not trying to impress, but simply being. That's the state that draws her in. That's when she texts first. That's when she stalks your stories. That's when she starts to wonder where your attention is going, because it's not solely on her. And in that wondering, she invests. Emotionally, mentally, and that's the beginning of true attraction, when she starts chasing your mind, not just your affection. Most men fear this shift because they associate emotional distance with punishment. But it's not punishment, it's polarity. Masculine energy attracts feminine energy not through submission, but through gravity. You don't need to explain your every emotion. You don't need to be her therapist. You need to be a mountain, calm, firm, present, but unmoved by the winds of desperation. Because the moment she feels you need her more than she needs you, the spell breaks. Not because you're weak, but because the power dynamic is off. And in love, power is perception. You think you're being kind, but she sees insecurity. You think you're being romantic, but she sees pressure. You think you're showing affection, but she reads it as imbalance. And the moment she senses that imbalance, she starts stepping back, testing, pushing, not because she hates you, but because something inside her needs to feel that you're not completely hers until she earns it, until she proves herself. Because what's freely given is never respected. And if you give your entire emotional self before she's emotionally invested, she will walk away with pieces of you she never deserved. Now here you are, wondering why your effort never pays off, why the good guy never wins. But maybe the truth is brutal and freeing at once. She doesn't want effort. She wants energy. She doesn't want certainty. She wants mystery. She doesn't want a role filled. She wants a role challenge. And unless you learn to be that emotional challenge, that man whose soul can't be deciphered with one glance, you'll always be loved politely and forgotten easily. The moment a man starts chasing validation, he begins to lose his identity. Not because he's weak by nature, but because he believes that affection must be earned through performance. He becomes a performer in his own relationship. Every message, every compliment, every kind gesture is not driven by authenticity, but by the silent hope that she will notice, approve, and stay. That subtle shift is where the erosion of masculine energy begins. It's not that you shouldn't care. It's that when your care turns into currency for attention, you turn love into a negotiation, and she will sense it, even if she never says it out loud. Women are intuitive. They may not always explain what they feel, but they feel everything. They pick up on shifts in tone, in posture, in emotional tempo. And when a man begins to orbit around a woman, emotionally, mentally, spiritually, she begins to feel the pressure of being his son. That pressure is not romantic. It's exhausting. It feels like she's being asked to be his source of validation instead of his companion. And once she feels that, she'll begin to pull away, not out of cruelty, but out of self-preservation. Because no woman wants to carry the emotional weight of being someone's only source of happiness. It's not flattering, it's frightening. You might think that giving her everything she wants will make her stay. But here's the uncomfortable truth. Most women don't stay for comfort. They stay for connection, yes. But more than that, they stay for polarity. They stay for the emotional tension of a man who is both present and independent. A man who loves with depth, but doesn't collapse into her arms like a boy needing a mother. When you give too much too soon, you rob her of the natural rhythm of emotional pursuit. She stops chasing, stops wondering, stops investing. Because she knows you've already given her everything, and what's already conquered isn't chased. Now think about the times when you were the one slightly uncertain, when a woman made you question her next move, when her silence made you analyze your own. You remember those moments vividly, don't you? Not because they were healthy, but because they were charged. That emotional voltage is what burns memories into the brain. Now understand that she's wired the same way. If you always answer, if you always explain, if you always comply, then you remove any space for tension. And without tension, there is no attraction. You've replaced fire with comfort. And while comfort is beautiful in a long-term relationship, it kills desire when given too early. This is why being too nice often backfires. Not because kindness is bad, but because when kindness is used as a strategy to be liked, it reeks of insecurity. Real kindness, the kind that women respect, is rooted in strength. It says, "I'm kind because that's who I am, not because I need you to stay." But if your kindness is a mask for your fear of being abandoned, she will feel that fear, and it will become unattractive. A woman doesn't want a man who's terrified of losing her. She wants a man who values her, but values himself more. In ancient times, tribes revered warriors not because they were violent, but because they were composed. A true warrior is not the man who explodes, but the man who chooses when to react and when to walk away. That's the kind of presence women are drawn to. Not a man who needs to be seen, but a man who is already grounded in his own skin. She wants to feel your depth, but she doesn't want to be your emotional crutch. She wants to explore your soul, but only if it's not laid bare without mystery. She wants to feel chosen, not needed. Here's a hard pill. If she feels that you need her more than she needs you, the emotional polarity reverses. She begins to view you like an obligation. And the more she senses that her presence is required for your stability, the less she will respect you. Love without balance becomes burden. And emotional burden is the fastest way to kill romantic energy. You think you're being loving. She feels like she's being chased by someone who's drowning, and she doesn't want to be pulled under. There's a silent test every woman gives a man. Will he choose himself when she pulls away? Will he maintain his rhythm when she withdraws? Or will he chase, over-explain, beg for clarity, and bleed neediness through every text? When she delays her reply, when she cancels a plan, when she becomes vague, how you react tells her everything. If you panic, she knows you're replaceable. If you maintain your calm, she sees that you are rare. Because true power isn't in pretending you don't care. It's in knowing that your peace isn't for sale. That's when she looks at you differently. Not because you've manipulated her, but because you've shown her something most men can't. Self-respect, without arrogance. You're not cold, but you're not desperate. You're not mean, but you're not pliable. You don't punish her silence. You just don't let it dominate your emotions. You allow space. You allow absence. And in that space, she begins to reflect. Because absence, when handled with dignity, speaks louder than presence. It says, I'm here because I choose to be, not because I can't be without you. This energy is magnetic. It pulls her in not through force, but through contrast. While other men are explaining themselves into oblivion, trying to convince her they're worthy, you are simply being. While others are texting novels at 2 a.m. trying to regain attention, you are at peace, building, living, moving. And that movement is what she starts to crave. Not because you played game, but because you had your own game to focus on. You stopped chasing approval and started walking in direction. You became the challenge, not by being difficult, but by being disciplined. The moment you realize that your silence holds more power than your words, everything shifts. You've been trained, by culture, by past relationships, even by guilt, to believe that love must always be proven, explained, defended. But this idea turns you into a defendant in a court where you were never on trial. And the more you defend yourself, the more you look guilty, not of wrongdoing, but of weakness. Because a man who is certain of his value doesn't narrate it, he radiates it. Think about how often you've tried to fix things with long text, with justification, with emotional transparency. You poured your heart out, not because it felt natural, but because you were hoping it would change how she sees you. But here's the bitter truth. Every time you over-explain, you hand over your frame. And the moment you do that, you're no longer leading emotionally. You're following her approval. And approval is a drug that feels like love. It gives you a short-term high. When she finally responds, when she shows a hint of warmth, when she says, I appreciate you, your brain rewards you. But that reward is deceptive. You're not receiving love. You're receiving compliance. You've become emotionally conditioned to settle for breadcrumbs. And you call it connection. That's not romance. That's survival. And survival is never sexy. Why do you think some men who seem emotionally unavailable are still desired? Because unpredictability creates tension. And tension, when paired with presence, is intoxicating. You don't have to be toxic. You don't have to disappear. But you do have to stop being predictable. Predictability removes contrast, and contrast is what makes someone memorable. You become forgettable not because you lack worth, but because you're always available, always agreeable, always explaining. Let's go deeper. There's a psychological law called intermittent reinforcement. It's the foundation of every addictive dynamic. It means that rewards that come inconsistently are more powerful than those that are always available. Casinos know this, social media knows this, and whether she's aware or not, your partner feels this too. If she always knows what you'll say, what you'll feel, how you'll react, there's no curiosity left. And when curiosity dies, so does desire. But when you hold back, not as a game, but as a standard, something changes. You stop flooding her with your emotion. You stop narrating every mood shift. You stop making her the center of your universe. And instead, you focus on building a life that has gravity. Gravity that pulls her in, not because you're chasing, but because your energy has become undeniable. You're no longer the man who explains himself into being chosen. You're the man who is chosen because you don't explain himself. She doesn't need to know every thought in your head. She doesn't need to hear every fear you carry. Mystery is not deception. Mystery is discipline. It's the art of withholding just enough to keep the story unfolding. You are the author of your presence, not the narrator of your insecurity. And the more you let silence speak for you, the more powerful your presence becomes. Silence doesn't mean absent. It means you've mastered restraint. And restraint, in a world of emotional overexposure, is the ultimate form of control. Imagine you're watching a film where the main character reveals everything in the first 10 minutes. There's no intrigue, no development, no edge. That character is forgettable. Now imagine a character who reveals just enough, a glance, a pause, a moment of intensity without full explanation. That's the character who lives in your mind long after the credits roll. Be that character. Not in a manipulative way, but in a way that honors your own depth. Because not everything about you is meant to be explained. Some parts of you are meant to be felt. You might fear that pulling back will make you lose her. But let me ask you, if she only stays when you chase, is she really with you? Or with the version of you that performs for her? The greatest form of self-betrayal is shaping yourself to be loved by someone who doesn't know who you truly are. You don't need more performance. You need more presence. And presence is felt most when it's not desperate. Let's be clear. This doesn't mean you become distant, cold, or emotionally unavailable. It means you speak less and mean more. You act less and impact more. You move from being a reactor to being a conductor. Your emotional energy isn't scattered. It's focused. You still care. You still love. But you do so from a place of abundance, not from fear. You stop explaining because you trust that your silence is strong enough to be understood. There's something dangerously attractive about a man who can walk away from what no longer serves him, not out of bitterness, but out of clarity. When you stop trying to convince someone of your worth, you send a message that echoes louder than any speech. I am not here to be begged for. I am here to be matched. That energy is rare. That energy rewires how people treat you, because suddenly, your attention is no longer free. Your presence is no longer guaranteed. And in that space, in that sacred pause, she either steps forward or fades away. And here's what's most shocking. The moment you stop trying to be chosen is the moment you become magnetic, because people want what they can't fully grasp. They want to earn what isn't freely offered. They want to explore what isn't constantly revealed. You don't have to be a puzzle, but you do have to stop being a window. Open windows are easy to look through. Closed doors make people knock. You've been present. You've been available. You've been reliable. You answer her texts within seconds, rearrange your schedule to meet her. Say yes to every suggestion, and make sure she knows you're always around. But the more you give, the less she responds. The more you offer, the colder she gets. It's not that she doesn't see your efforts. It's that your efforts are no longer exciting. Predictability kills curiosity. And when a woman stops being curious about you, the emotional connection dies quietly. Here's the brutal truth. She doesn't want to be reassured every minute that you're there. She wants to wonder why you're not. Not because she's cruel, not because she doesn't value attention, but because desire is fed by tension, not by comfort. It's the unanswered question that keeps her coming back. The moment she can predict exactly what you'll say, when you'll say it, and how you'll react, she stops needing to ask. And this isn't a game. It's not about pretending to be unavailable. It's about building a life so rich and full that you're not constantly orbiting around someone else's validation. Because the most irresistible men are the ones who don't chase. They attract. They don't need to be chosen. They choose. Their time is limited. Their energy is focused. And their presence feels earned, not given away for free. When a woman knows she can have your attention anytime, she begins to treat it like background noise. But when your attention feels like a rare signal, directed, intentional, scarce, it becomes magnetic. Scarcity builds value. You can be kind, generous, and loving, but only to the degree that it feels authentic, not desperate. Let's put this into perspective. Imagine walking into a store and seeing a diamond on a glass shelf with a big sign that says, "Take me, I'm free." That diamond could be real, but the way it's being presented makes you question its value. On the other hand, imagine a velvet-covered box, guarded behind glass, with a spotlight shining down on it. You have to ask to see it. You have to be vetted. That diamond might not even be better, but the presentation makes it priceless. You are that diamond. But if you make yourself too accessible, you make yourself emotionally cheap. And this isn't about manipulation. This is about restoring your worth by controlling how you give yourself. You don't have to withhold love. You just have to stop offering it where it's not being respected. Let's look at how this plays out in real life. There's a man who listens to her vent for hours. He picks her up from work. He texts her, "Good morning," and "Good night." He tells her she's beautiful. He tells her he'll wait until she's ready. And while he's doing all that, she's texting someone else, someone who disappears for 3 days and then reappears with a smirk and a challenge. It doesn't make logical sense, but attraction is not logical. It's emotional. It's biological. It responds to contrast, not consistency. That doesn't mean you become rude or cold or emotionally distant. It means you stop being emotionally obvious. You become a man who holds something back, who doesn't explain everything, who doesn't need to justify his silence, because that silence, when held with power, speaks volume. It says, you're in control of your emotions. You're not begging for attention. You're not performing to be liked. You're simply living, and she can choose to step into your world or not. There's a psychological concept called intermittent reinforcement. It's the most addictive behavioral pattern known in psychology. It's the pattern slot machines use. It's not about constant wins. It's about the unpredictability of the reward. That's what keeps people hooked. That's what creates obsession. Relationships work the same way. If someone knows exactly what to expect, the emotional impact fades. But if your presence is felt powerfully, then withdrawn, and then reappears with depth and intention, that creates a lasting impression. So, stop giving all of yourself away at once. Let people earn the parts of you that matter. Let mystery breathe. Let her wonder where you are, not because you're playing games, but because you're genuinely busy building something that doesn't revolve around her approval. When you become a man who is comfortable in solitude, who doesn't explain his every move, who holds back just enough to keep his soul sacred, you stop being just another guy. You become a man she has to figure out. And that journey of discovery, of tension, of curiosity, that's what creates desire that doesn't fade. And when she starts asking questions again, what's he thinking? Why didn't he text? Where is he tonight? You've already shifted the dynamic. You're no longer the one chasing. You've become the mystery, and the mystery always wins. But here lies the final and most brutal truth. The reason she doesn't feel the same intensity you feel, the reason you keep investing in someone who treats your love like background noise, because she never had to earn it. You gave it away like it was nothing. Free, unfiltered, unconditional. And while the movies will tell you that's noble, in reality, it's forgettable. People rarely value what comes too easily. That's not cynicism, it's pattern. It's behavioral law. We're conditioned to chase what isn't certain. The harder something is to access, the more value we assign to it. The more mysterious the outcome, the more our brains flood with dopamine. And yet, you, desperate to show how serious you are, do the complete opposite. You overexpose. You explain your intention. You send good morning texts that get ignored. And still you double down. She cancels, you apologize. She flakes, you reassure. She ghosts, you wait. And while you interpret your persistence as proof of loyalty, she reads it as proof of weakness. There's a psychological term called reactance, the instinctive resistance people have when they feel their freedom is being threatened. The more you pressure someone to feel something, the more they retreat. And the tragedy? You don't even realize you're doing it. You're not begging for her love with your words. You're begging for it with your emotional availability, your reliability, your silence when she disrespects you. All of it adds up to a story she's already bored of reading. Let me ask you something. Have you ever noticed how she lights up for someone who gives her less? How she responds faster to the one who doesn't seem too eager? That's not magic. That's biology. Her brain is wired to respond to uncertainty with curiosity. And you, in your innocence, removed all the mystery from yourself. You gave her a full map to your emotions, and she didn't even ask for it. And what's worse, you keep doing it, hoping that one more act of kindness will turn the tide, that one more sacrifice will make her see your worth. But you're not building value, you're digging your own grave. Every time you wait by your phone, every time you justify her coldness, every time you explain how much she means to you without her ever asking, you're stripping yourself of the only thing that commands desire, your emotional sovereignty. Because here's the truth, no one tells you. The most attractive men are not the ones who offer the most. They're the ones who protect their offering like it's gold. They don't beg to be chosen. They choose. They don't chase. They attract. And they don't let the fear of being alone turn them into emotional servants. You need to understand that love is not a resume you submit to be reviewed. You don't earn someone's heart by outgiving your competition. You earn it by being the kind of man who doesn't chase after what's walking away. The kind of man who understands that his time, his presence, his affection, it all has a price. And that price is mutual respect. So when she sends you that late-night message after days of silence, don't rush to reply. When she says she misses talking after treating you like an option, don't fall back into the same rhythm. Make her meet a version of you that isn't desperate to be kept. Make her feel what it's like to lose access to you. Not out of spite, but out of self-respect. That's the power of absence. When you stop showing up for someone who takes you for granted, you don't just change their perception of you, you change your own. You reclaim your sense of worth, not by proving anything to her, but by remembering what you deserve. And it's not someone who confuses your kindness with passivity. It's not someone who replies when they're bored. It's not someone who keeps you around as a placeholder while they search for better. You're not a bench warmer in someone else's love story. You are the main character in your own, but you can't take that role unless you stop writing yourself as the sidekick. Don't confuse emotional investment with emotional power. You think you're being strong by staying, by holding on, by fighting for her attention, but true strength lies in the ability to walk away with your dignity intact, to say, "This is not enough for me," and mean it, to exit, even when your heart screams to stay. That's where your transformation begins, not in her change of mind, but in your change of standards. You don't need her to realize your worth. You need to stop giving your worth to people who can't see it, because she's not confused. She knows what she's doing. And you know it too. You feel it every time your message gets ignored, every time she's hot and cold, every time you lie to yourself that she's just going through something. No, She's not confused, she's just comfortable. Comfortable knowing you'll still be there. The question is, are you? Because once you reclaim your energy, once you stop pouring it into someone who drains it, something incredible happens. You become unpredictable again, mysterious, valuable. You become the challenge, not the reward handed out for free. And suddenly, she starts to notice what she's losing. She starts to ask questions. But by then, it won't even matter. Because by then, you'll remember who you are. And you'll realize you were never trying to win her over. You were trying to win yourself back. Let me know when you're ready for the next theme.